Chapter 8 Luli. So, Dahlia bint Adnan lowered her pipe and exhaled a cloud of shisha into the air. It hung like blue mist above her and Luli's heads. You met Rasul al-Jashin. The tavern keeper's amber eyes shone like coins in the dimness. How did you like him? He was ugly as sin. Dahlia smirked. Not that I don't agree, but that doesn't answer my question. He was okay for a merchant. Luli glanced at the door to her room for what was possibly the dozenth time that hour. While she didn't mind filling Dahlia in on her adventures, the second hour of moonrise was nearly upon them and she was becoming impatient. Kadir had left some time ago to gather gossip from around the souk, promising he would keep an ear out for rumors of assassins in black. She'd assumed he would be back in time for their visit to the night market, but hours had gone by, and though she was in her merchant robes and ready to depart, Kadir was still not here. You seem agitated, Dahlia said with a click of her tongue. Let me guess. Kadir? Luli scowled. He's late. Isn't he always? You ought to find a timelier bodyguard. She grinned. Or better yet, a husband to distract you from your business. Someone Kadir will not scare away. Luli did not smoke shisha, but in that moment she wanted nothing more than to steal that pipe from Dahlia's hands and blow smoke in her face. They'd had this conversation many times. Luli always gave Dahlia the same answer. I would rather marry a dust-covered relic than a man, they said in unison. Luli flushed. Dahlia grinned. Yes, yes, I know. If only you had better suitors, eh? Maybe if you dismissed your bodyguard when you met with them. Never. I'd much rather leave the rejections to him. They shared a laugh at this, and the tension in Luli's shoulders eased. For the briefest of moments, she was tempted to tell Dahlia the truth, that there was a man in Dime she had feelings for, against her better judgment. But Ahmed's name was a knot in her throat. She had managed to avoid thinking about him for the past few weeks. The last thing she needed was for Dahlia to ask pointed questions about their relationship. Thankfully, she was spared the turmoil of untangling her complicated feelings for him when the door opened and Kadir entered. He dipped his head. Dahlia. Dahlia smiled fondly. Brute. You're late. Luli held back a sigh of relief as she stood. The bag of infinite space hung off one of her shoulders, and she had draped a glittering shawl over her head and lined her eyes with kohl. Now she pulled the shawl around her face, concealing everything but her eyes. But now I am here, he said. Shall we go? We shall. She wafted smoke away as she strode toward the door. Dahlia rose from her cushion on the floor. Are you sure you don't want to stay for old Ruba's stories? She crossed her bulky arms. He's missed you, you know. You make a very good shill in the audience. Luli thought of Yusuf, the starry-eyed man with a passion for stories. I believe there would be a man here who would be more than happy to steal that honor. She was actually a little regretful she couldn't stay to talk with him. It would have been much easier to pry his secrets from him face to face. Dahlia raised a brow. Is he handsome, this man? I was too distracted by his horrendously baggy clothing to notice, I'm afraid. Dahlia sighed. You only ever have eyes for shiny things, don't you? Because I can trade shiny things for gold. As she turned and walked away, Dahlia called after her. If you see him again, give Rasul my greetings. He may be ugly, but he has some of the most desirable goods in the market. It clicked in Luli's mind then why Rasul had looked so familiar. He, like her, was a merchant of the night market. She probably passed his stall many times without realizing it. She and Kadir returned to the wine cellar where they opened and entered a trapdoor hidden between casks of wine that led into the Medine's underground tunnels. Years ago, Dahlia's father, Adnan, had built these tunnels with a group of like-minded criminals. He'd constructed what was now the night market, an underground souk where precious illegal goods were sold away from the watchful gaze of the Sultan. After her father's passing, Dahlia had taken over the business. Luli withdrew the glowing orb from her bag and used it to light their way through the tunnels. Some led out of the city and had been used by fleeing criminals. But she did not know those paths. She knew only the way to the underground market. Turns later, Kadir started humming. He did that sometimes to fill the silence. When he was in a particularly good mood, he sang. It was always the same song about a king who traveled the world looking for his lost love. She'd heard it enough to know the lyrics by heart. The stars they burn the night and guide the sheik's way. Go to her, they say, the star of your eye. Go to her, the compass of your heart. Luli coughed. What news from the souk? Kadir stopped humming. Mostly it was the same rumors about the increase in jinn attacks. I overheard many ridiculous stories about jinn spiriting people away to the sand sea. The jinn hunters do love to embellish their propaganda, don't they? Kadir grunted. It seems to be in their nature. They turned another corner. Not too far away, Luli saw the bright red lanterns that marked the tunnel leading into the night market. Any mention of killers in black? Kadir shook his head. Luli stifled a groan. If only she'd been able to speak with the shadow jinn longer. She wondered vaguely if there was a way to summon her. There was one more thing. Kadir's voice cut through the din of her thoughts. You remember the relic Rasul mentioned on the ashram? I was able to gather that the Sultan is searching for some priceless treasure, but none of the rumors specified what it was. We couldn't just command the compass to lead us to that thing the Sultan wants? A faint smile touched Kadir's lips. I am afraid not. We need to know what it is. And yet the compass manages to guide you to something as vague as your destiny. His smile widened as he strode ahead of her. Only because I have a special connection to it. I know the jinn who enchanted it. Luli scowled at his back. She did not see the correlation, but she would let it pass. Kadir was made up of small secrets. They both were. So long as his secret didn't harm her, she was content to let him keep them. She followed after him, and it was not long before the tunnel opened into a spacious cavern lit by multicolored lanterns. Beneath the lights was a cluttered landscape of canopied stalls. Though it was small in comparison to the Medine souk, the goods hawked here in the night market were 100 times more valuable. Here, merchants set up stalls in gemstone-lined alcoves and advertised rare artisan products beneath painted signs written in elaborate cursive. Intricately designed plush rugs, beautiful blades created from brass and bone and glass, ceramics crafted by famous Western artists. It was an impressive assortment of imported goods, to be sure, but nothing near as precious as what she brought to the market. Luli knew this. It was why she smiled like a crook every time she visited. But no one could see that smirk beneath her scarf as she wound her way through the cramped thoroughfares, edging her way past rowdy customers who gave her a wide berth when they noticed Kadir. Though she was the one with the reputation, everyone in the underground souk knew of her so-called mysterious bodyguard. Though rumors had still circulated about Kadir, Luli was glad they died down in recent years. It had been a profoundly uncomfortable experience to listen to customers guess at their relationship to her face. Kadir had put an end to the initial speculation when an especially brazen customer had approached their stall to ask how much coin Kadir had offered Luli for her bridal price. The jinn had looked him dead in the eye and said, "My employer is not a commodity to be bought." Kadir was many things, a business partner, guardian, friend, but husband would never be one of them. Even just the thought made Luli shudder. Kadir wasn't family, not exactly, but he was something like it. She cast a look over her shoulder and grinned when she saw him glaring warily at the crowds. His frown deepened when he saw her staring. "What are you smiling at?" "Nothing. I'm just grateful for your glower, which strikes fear into the hearts of men." Kadir's expression softened. "Oh, your smile strikes fear into the hearts of men." "Ah, but not so much fear they hesitate to open their wallets." She waved a finger at him. "That's the important thing." Kadir's only response was a long-suffering sigh. He trailed quietly behind her as she turned into another alley of shops. She made her way to an empty stall wedged between two others. Behind one stood a young man selling bundles of expensive shisha. His visage was foggy behind the smoke he blew out in large rings. The other was managed by an old man who sold rare foreign coins that had been stacked in neat columns behind glass cases. The young man lowered his pipe and gaped at her, eyes wide enough to catch flies. "Midnight merchant," he said in awe. The old man cackled. "What did I do to deserve you setting up shop next to me, Luli al-Nazari?" "Well, salam to you too, Sadiki." Luli grinned as she began to set up her stall. The young man looked between them confused. The old merchant shook his head. "Get close enough to a star and it burns you, boy." "You exaggerate." With some assistance from Kadir, Luli mounted their treasures on the shelves. "I only burn those who get in the way of good business." She smirked as she set the magic orb down on the counter and tapped it with her hand. "Magic," the young man whispered as it brightened beneath her touch. It was not long before market goers gathered to eye the merchandise. Earlier, Dahlia had said Rasul had some of the most sought after merchandise in the market. Lily didn't know what he sold, but she knew her goods were superior. The relics she gathered were extremely rare. A traveler would be extraordinarily lucky to come across one in their lifetime. But she had a compass that would lead her to anything, including stray magic. And she was the only one who dared ignore the Sultan's relic selling ban, which meant her bravery was rewarded with coin. At some point, Kadir stepped away from the merchandise to stand behind her and look intimidating. His stare was both focused and all-encompassing. No one ever dared purloin a relic beneath his watchful gaze. Finally, when all the objects were placed, Luli announced the opening of her business. The crowds flocked to her stall like hungry pigeons, prodding and testing the magic with greedy hands. The young merchant watched from his stall with a mixture of awe and envy. Luli raised her hands and wiggled her fingers at him. "Magic," she whispered.